Hi, my name is Charleston Starr, and today I will be presenting on understanding APTs, Advanced Persistent Threats to the Cyberspace. This is part of Cyber 33251 Computer Security with Dr. Yohannes Tadesse. And I just want to say before we get started with any of this, that this video is solely for educational purposes and that I am not liable for any damage that could be caused using these demonstrations. So to start, as an introduction to APTs, they are stealthy threat actors, typically a state or sponsored group, launching sophisticated and sustained cyber attacks in which the intruder establishes an undetected presence in the network in order to steal sensitive data over a prolonged period of time. They are typically advanced, well-funded, and experienced teams of cyber criminals that target high-value organizations. They are persistent, in which the attacks are designed for long-term operations where the focus is on maintaining a persistent presence on the network. And they are highly targeted, where they launch highly targeted attacks against specific organizations, industries, or countries, some of which we will talk about later in this presentation. Their overall objectives are cyber espionage, as in the case of Russian hackers, for example. They target adversaries for the purpose of theft of data, theft of information, or intellectual property, and they're also targeting disruption of other countries' critical infrastructure, one of which I will show you an example of as a cyber attack from Russia on Ukraine. And another objective is financial gain. As in the case of North Korean hackers, they target organizations for money in order to fund ballistics programs, or simply for stealing and keeping loot, depending on what kind of APT they are. If they're state-funded, perhaps they will be stealing for their government. They also hack for hacktivism, which is the utilization of hacking for political or social causes. And then, of course, destruction, the utilization of hacking to cause chaos and destroy valuable assets. And that also ties into cyber espionage in a way, as stealing valuable assets, destroying valuable assets, and causing chaos in a system or even a country can certainly make a large impact. And now the anatomy of an attack by an APT. It starts off with reconnaissance, which is the initial collection of information about the target organization, industry, or country. They conduct investigations against its infrastructure, employees, partners, and third-party vendors or providers or customers, and they may even utilize open source intelligence, OSINT tools, to assess security and identify vulnerabilities. And an example of that is using OSINT tools to find potential target employees for phishing attacks. For example, I will show you an attack later in which North Korea targeted an Axie Infinity ex-employee with a fake job offer and found him on LinkedIn, sent the fake job offer, and ended up stealing hundreds of millions of dollars due to that. And now the tactics, techniques, and procedures, the TTPs, which I will refer to as later on, are for reconnaissance, that is. They are OSINT, active scanning, and gather victim host identity and network information. And I'll start with OSINT, that is open source intelligence, which is the gathering and analyzation of publicly available information, typically through social media or other public-facing websites or databases. Active scanning is a scan where the adversary probes victim infrastructure via network traffic to find more information and opportunities for attacks. And gather victim host identity network information is the gathering of information about the victim's host machine, victim's personal or employee data, and network information. One example here is of active scanning, where they actively try to scan different ports, different IPs, and wait for a response, because this is in order to see if the network's online and will respond to any requests which are sent their way. And this can identify open ports, this can identify IPs, target IP addresses, target networks in general. The next anatomy of an attack is initial compromise, which includes utilizing social engineering, spear phishing, or exploiting known vulnerabilities to gain access to a network. And this is when the attackers use one of these means to get their initial access inside of the organization's network. For example, sending a phishing email to social engineer an employee to give login credentials for an important application or website, or perhaps install malware on their device. Once again, an example will cover this exact kind of attack and the social engineering and spear phishing behind it. in the case of North Korea, of course. And the TTPs for initial compromise are typically phishing, supply chain compromise, and valid accounts. Phishing includes sending emails or messages to deceive individuals to reveal personal information, such as passwords and account credentials, or to install malware in the case of North Korea sending fake job offers, for example. Supply chain compromise is the manipulation of a product or products prior to receipt by a final consumer for the purpose of data or system compromise. And valid accounts includes obtaining and abusing credentials of existing accounts as means of gaining initial access, persistence, privilege escalation, or defense evasion. Persistence and privilege escalation are things that I will also talk about, including defense evasion. But valid accounts can be used for all kinds of things. And this is why it's important to keep valid accounts secure, as if a bad actor finds a password out in the wild and attempts it on the organization, multi-factor authentication can potentially stop that. And another preventative measure and mitigation measure I will talk about later on. And now the next anatomy of an attack, the next step, is establish foothold, where the attackers create a foothold by installing backdoors for remote access and command and control communications with their servers. Malware is used in this case for backdoors, and C2 communications may include DNS or domain fronting. One case is where they use malware and communicate with trusted domains for the exfiltration of data and for sending communications back and forth between the attacker and the victim machines. Another anatomy of an attack is privilege escalation, where attackers use exploits and password cracking among many other tactics and techniques to acquire administrator privileges over the victim's computer and possibly expand it to Windows domain administrator accounts. And I'm not sure why the example isn't showing here, but one example is using password cracking or pass the hash attacks, which I will talk about later on, in order to gain access to an administrator account and then give the administrator user role to another individual or new user on the organization's network. And some TTPs include process injection, scheduled task job, or account manipulation. Process injection is the injection of code into processes, in order to evade process-based defenses as well as possibly elevate privileges. Scheduled task job is the abuse of task scheduling functionality to facilitate initial or recurring execution of malicious code. Account manipulation is the manipulation of accounts to maintain and or elevate access to victim systems. And now the next anatomy of an attack is lateral movement, where attackers move laterally within the network to find valuable assets and expand control to other workstations, servers, and infrastructure elements. The attackers will locate any other infrastructure elements and monitor activity and traffic, documents on the network, and anything else that may be of value. And another thing that may be an example of this includes wiresharking or using data sniffing tools or traffic sniffing tools in order to potentially find any unencrypted documents or communications sent between employees once the attacker is in the network. And some TTPs include pass the hash, which I just talked about, remote services, man-in-the-middle attacks, and pass the hash is stealing a hashed user credential and using it to create a new user session on the same network. Remote services include using valid accounts to log into a service that accept remote connections such as Telnet, SSH, or VNC protocols, and then performing actions as the logged on user. And man-in-the-middle attacks include the interception and spreading of communications throughout a server network to expand control inside the network. And now, one of the last things, data exfiltration. After locating sensitive data, files, documents, credentials, and more, attackers will exfiltrate and store stolen information using tunneling techniques or encrypted channels. They may even use DOS attacks to distract the team and network personnel while the data is being exfiltrated. One example includes using Telegram, Gmail, or other social media services whose traffic may be ignored by the network for the exfiltration of data to the attacker's own C2 servers. And now persistence and erasing tracks. Attackers maintain persistence through the backdoors, trojans, and malwares they install. They ensure continued controlled access over channels and credentials acquired in previous steps. Attackers then cover their tracks by deleting logs, altering timestamps, and using anti-forensic techniques. And an example can include just simply going through the logs and deleting any log information from a localhost system in order to cover their tracks. And for persistence, A simple example would just be installing malware, which would auto-run once the computer starts up. And some TTPs for this include, for persistence, boot or logon auto start execution, where the configuration of system settings to automatically execute a program during system boot or log on to maintain persistence or gain higher level privileges on compromised systems. They also create or modify system processes, where system processes repeatedly execute malicious payloads as part of persistence. And then another thing is hijack execution flow, where the execution of the threat actor's malicious payloads by hijacking the way operating systems run programs. And this can be done through DLLs, other libraries, path, or service registry, for example. And they also hide artifacts, where they hide artifacts associated with the threat actor's behaviors to evade detection, such as deleting log files, directories, user accounts, or other activities on the system. And now for examples regarding these APTs. China, which is Wicked Panda APT 41, they are directly associated with the Chinese Communist Party, and they have a history of targeting healthcare, high-tech, communications, higher education, video games, travel, and news organizations. They are believed to be based out of Chengdu, China, and they have an alleged association with China's Ministry of State Security. APT 41 is believed to have been in operation since at least 2007, and they are a group whose goals include cyber espionage and financial gain. And a real-world example of this is 2024 attacks which were targeting the gambling and the gaming industry, where they used techniques such as phantom DLL hijacking and other abuse for persistence and evasion. And they established communication with their own C2 servers, infected systems within VPN subnets, and expanded their tools and tactics based on the security team's responses to maintain persistent access. And they maintained the access for nearly 9 months. The initial access vector is likely spear phishing, which we will also talk about later on. And their actions resulted in data exfiltration, financial loss, potential cryptocurrency mining, operational disruption, and reputational damages for the targeted gambling and gaming industry organizations. Now North Korea. This is one of my favorite ones because I'm personally invested into cryptocurrency, so the example here is perfect in my opinion. North Korea has a hacking division known as Lazarus Group. They're APT 38. They're run by the government of North Korea, and they've targeted banks, financial institutions, casinos, crypto exchanges, SWIFT system endpoints, and ATMs, and I'm going to assume a lot much more. I've seen they've also targeted individuals as well in at least 38 countries worldwide with sophisticated cross-platform attacks, one of which we'll talk about later. And their tactics include spear phishing, watering hole attacks, and exploiting zero-day vulnerabilities. They've also been known to disable monitoring protocols in victims' operating systems to evade detection. They have conducted numerous high-profile financial cyber attacks and engaged in cyber espionage. And a real-world example is the 2022 Ronin Bridge hack that targeted the crypto game Axie Infinity. It resulted in the losses of $615 million in crypto assets, including Ethereum and other assets. It happened from a fake job offer from North Korean hackers to one of the game's developers. Once the employee opened the fake job offer document disguised as a PDF, the malware was deployed on the employee's device. North Korea then gained access to private keys used to forge fake withdrawals and validator nodes. And they were able to exfiltrate $615 million of user assets. And now Russia. They have many different hacking programs, but this one is called CYBR. This is APT 28. They target aerospace, defense, energy, government, media, and dissidents using a sophisticated and cross-platform implant. To attack their victims, they typically employ both phishing messages and credential harvesting to use using spoofed websites. This group is also known for registering domains that closely resemble domains of legitimate organizations they plan to target in order to establish phishing websites that spoof the look and the feel of the victim's web-based email services with the intention of harvesting their credentials. And a real-world example of this, not necessarily targeting credentials, but malware attacks from this APT, is the 2023 attacks targeting Ukrainian government agencies to spread data-stealing malware on compromised machines. They used fake Windows Updates emails throughout April, spoofing the email addresses of government agencies' system administrators and sending emails containing malicious attachments. The main goal for the cyber espionage against Ukraine was to infiltrate targeted systems and steal sensitive data while attempting to disrupt the functioning of the Ukrainian government. And once again, this ties back into the beginning where I say they use cyber espionage for the disruption of other countries. And this right here is an example of the fake email sent from APT 28. It includes steps, once again, this is in the Russian language, which include how to install these updates, these fake updates, and essentially go through a step-by-step guide on how to do all this. And what they are installing is indeed malware. This is not legitimate software at all. And you can see that right here if you were to go through each step line by line. And now this demonstration will consist of a simulated phishing attempt, my demonstration, against a fake organization through a social engineering attempt using a cloned website attempting to harvest credentials for the purpose of infiltrating the network. I will close out of here and I will start this. So I used GoFish here. I have this on my desktop. GoFish. And what I will do is I will launch GoFish. It is now on 127.0.1, and I will show you step by step exactly how I would go about launching a phishing attack against myself here, just an imaginary organization. We are going to refresh the page. It is not on the page right now. It is this IP address with the 333 port. We will use the credentials, which I have done myself. I will delete this current campaign as I will walk step by step through how to create a campaign on here and exactly what's going on. So to start, what you're going to do is make a user group. Currently, I'm not going to delete the email template or the landing page, but what's going to happen right here is you create a user group. The group name, I'm using a UPS phishing domain just because that was most recent in my email. I'm expecting a package, and many people actually get smishing texts, which is phishing texts, for UPS and USPS and FedEx packages. So what I will do here is I'll enter the group name UPS targets, because this is going to be the targets. I will just say my name for this fake organization, as you can see the position. We will do a few different emails. We will do charlestonjstar@gmail.com. Add myself as a CEO here. We will say that there is Charleston H star at charlestonjstar@outlook.com. We'll put the position as CFO. We'll click add. And then bulk import users also supports CSV templates depending on, the targets, which would be good for attackers actually. And we'll do Charleston F star, and we will do a temporary email right here. I would like you to note all of these emails right here. These were test emails, just to see if it would work, and it does work. I'm going to note this email down right here because some emails don't pass through Outlook and Gmail filtration systems, which I will show you soon. We'll add a CTO, and then we will save the changes for the group. Now the email template is also important because what's going on right here is I imported HTML of a legitimate email which I'd found from UPS. On the source you can view it right here. We got the request to reset your UPS password. We are just going to say PIN. I'm just copying an email right here as an example email. An attacker might use something else. They might have a PIN here depending on if they're trying to social engineer something. They could even have a password reset page or a fake login page. And right now I do not have a fake login page only because this essentially, GoFish can copy websites, but it was not working for me. And I spent so much time doing SMTP and troubleshooting this that I couldn't do it. We will say the envelope sender is just the UPS@outlook.com, just so our emails can pass. The subject will be reset your pass now, and this will be the contents of the email. We will add a tracking image to ensure that people are clicking on it and it tracks to us. We'll call this UPS. We'll save the template. Now the landing page is the page that they click on if they click on your link there. So right now, I just have a phishing page that says you got scammed. And the reason why is only because when it comes to this page, I couldn't import the other one. So this was also what was messing up for me. I couldn't import this website, but the demonstration still perfectly applies. We'll call this UPS, save the page. And now we are going to update our sending profile, and this is going to be what actually sends the email out. And so what I did is I input my own stuff. I had even bought, for this demonstration, I had bought my own domain on Namecheap, and now it's going to have me log into Mailgun again. I will not right now, just to save time. But I also bought an SMTP website, SMTP sending stuff. So connected it to my domain. I call it testfishdomainstar.com. The email will be from testfishdomainstar.com. The host is the Mailgun, SMTP. The username is my username. The password is the password. And this is what took me so long to figure out. I was fiddling with this last night for so long and I couldn't figure it out until finally I gave up, got the subscription, and got my own domain, and it works fine now. So I'm just going to click Save Profile, and now we can finally start a campaign. Now we can create a new campaign. We will just call this UPS phishing campaign. The email template will be the UPS one that we selected. The landing page will be the UPS one we selected. The URL is going to be whatever URL you are currently on right now, whatever website has the landing page. The launch date is the current time. The group will be the UPS targets, and the sending profile is going to be UPS. Now what we're going to do is click this and launch the campaign, and as you can see, we're going to have emails rolling in. We will launch, and now it's scheduled to be launched. And now all 3 emails have been sent. First, we're going to check the Outlook. And as of right now, there is nothing. We're going to check the temporary mail. I'm going to refresh this and see if we have an extra email here, assuming that this email address did not change on us. It did not. We see it right here. And as you can see, it's perfect. We see the exact same contents. The sender is the ups@outlook.com. This is able to be spoofed and stuff, but I will not do that for this demonstration, and I've heard in many countries it is illegal to spoof emails. So the legality on that varies. And then just to check really quick, our Charleston, our CEO's email. Now we have an email from the ups@outlook.com via the testfishdomainstar.com domain. And it says, from UPS, hi, we have the request to reset your UPS password. And as you can see, this looks completely legitimate. We can even update the sender, which I will do right now, part of this campaign. However, what's going to happen right here is you're going to notice that it gets flagged in a lot of email boxes. It won't even deliver. So this demonstration will only be done on the temp mail. It'll be sent to all the emails. However, you will not be able to see it because it does not pass the email check. So what I will do is I will go to email templates. I will do ups@ups.com, save the template, go to campaigns, launch the campaign, select the group of UPS targets, and launch the campaign. And immediately one email has been sent, now all 3. And now as you can see here, the sender is ups.com. If we go to ups.com, this is the official UPS, and this is where I received my emails from UPS as well. And it says reset your pass now. The contents are still the same, and It passes the email checks, at least for this. There are more sophisticated ways that threat actors can pass email checks and also spoof emails in order to look like it's entirely legitimate. And this is extremely scary, especially against an organization which has millions of dollars in assets and data. This simple email can threaten the entire organization's security. And so, just to get back to the presentation, as this is a good segment into my next part, we will talk about the detection, prevention, and the mitigation steps. My apologies. Detection strategies include the use of endpoint protection and response solutions, which are tools that monitor and respond to malicious activities on network endpoints through the detection of anomalies. Network monitoring for suspicious activity is also a detection strategy in which it employs real-time analysis of network traffic to identify unusual patterns, unauthorized access, data exfiltration attempts, and more. Threat intelligence integration can also be used as integrating solutions from other threat intelligence companies to identify known attack patterns and malicious IPs or domains used by attackers can help detect any potential threats to an organization's security. One example here is of endpoint protection software. And as you can see, it has many detections, prevented attacks, different leads, also vulnerabilities in system software depending on how it's configured, all assets, identity protection, and much more. Mitigation strategies include implementing least privilege principles, restricting user and application permissions to only what is necessary for their roles, data recovery and backup restoration, ensuring that the availability and using secure, uncompromised backups quickly to restore data after an attack. And the incident response plan, which is the steps that must be taken to stop the spread of the incident without causing unnecessary outage. And this is extremely important as well because employees, as we done in one of our weekly discussions and activities, could take a bad step and make things even worse. And prevention strategies, potential prevention strategies at least, can include employee training on phishing and social engineering, as if you train employees to recognize phishing and social engineering attempts, they may stay vigilant and report all attempts to the organization, and more importantly, recognize the threat and stop it. Well, not necessarily stop it, but prevent it from becoming an issue for the organization and potentially stop the threat if they report it to the higher-ups. Regular patches and updates can also be useful, as updating all software and applications on the network can potentially prevent the exploitation of zero-day attacks. Using multi-factor authentication is also great, organization-wide for all accounts, because if an attacker gets access to a valid account, they might have to launch another attack or not even just access the affected account. Network segmentation also involves dividing the network into isolated segments to limit an attacker's ability to move laterally and access critical systems. And this can prevent an attacker from making an attack so much worse for an organization, as if the organization just completely falls apart after an attack, it could be because the attacker was able to move laterally in the network. And if you can help prevent that, that could prevent a much larger issue for an attacker, for an organization. And now my conclusion on APTs. APTs are advanced, persistent, and targeted threat actors that are unlike the typical cyber miscreant. APTs are stealthy and highly skilled attackers launching highly sophisticated attacks for the purposes of cyber espionage, financial gain, hacktivism, or destruction. APTs follow a structured life cycle and use techniques such as phishing, social engineering, and exploitation of vulnerabilities to gain presence on a network. This means that high-value organizations, also companies and countries, need to invest greatly in cybersecurity infrastructure and implement detection, mitigation, and prevention strategies in order to keep their assets and data secure from these highly advanced attackers. Thank you very much. These are my sources.